They said I'd lost my mind, not behind my back, not whispered in worried tones. They said it out loud, over dinner, in group chats, at family gatherings. My own mother told my aunt that I was having a psychological break because I quit my job and talked about building something of my own. Something about the way I said it, the way my eyes lit up, the way my voice shook with excitement. It scared them. Or maybe it just embarrassed them. All I'd done was share an idea that had been quietly living inside me for years, fed by sleepless nights, endless research, and a gut-deep belief that mental health care needed to change. I didn't ask for permission. I didn't wait for their blessing. I just decided. I told them I was leaving my admin job at the hospital and starting a mental health startup, a place where people wouldn't be dismissed, where their minds wouldn't be treated like broken machines, a place that wouldn't laugh in their faces the way my family laughed in mine. My brother, the doctor, leaned back in his chair and chuckled. "You mean like a blog?" My father didn't even look up from his plate. "You'll be back in 2 months. Probably sooner." And my mother, she tilted her head with that pitying smile she's mastered so well. "Sweetheart, this sounds like a delusion. You need to talk to someone, professionally." That was the moment it hit me. They weren't mocking me to be cruel. They actually believed something was wrong with me. And soon, everyone else did too. Within days, the phone calls started, concerned relatives, old friends I hadn't heard from in years. "Hey, just checking in. Your mom mentioned you've been going through something?" It wasn't just disbelief. It was character assassination dressed as concern. My decision wasn't bold or ambitious. It was a symptom, a warning sign, a red flag. Suddenly, I was the mentally unstable one. And the worst part? A tiny voice inside me, the one they had spent years nurturing, started to believe them. But even as I sat in my childhood bedroom, staring at my laptop surrounded by silence and doubt, something deeper burned inside me. A flicker, a fury, a quiet, stubborn truth that refused to die, no matter how loud their voices got. I wasn't crazy. I was just done living small. It started with a rumor, planted like a seed and watered by every conversation I wasn't invited to. "She's not well. That girl always was a little intense. You know, it runs in the family." I could feel it before I ever heard it. The sideways glances at the grocery store, the hesitant smiles from neighbors I'd known my entire life, the way even my closest cousin, Aaliyah, pulled back when I tried to explain what I was building. I wasn't expecting applause, but I never imagined silence could be so loud. And my family, they weren't just spectators, they were narrators. My mother called my high school counselor and told her I was having episodes. My father spoke to our local imam, asking for prayers and guidance in case her condition worsened. My brother sent me links to articles about burnout and early psychosis, under the guise of just looking out. But no one asked me how I was doing, not once. Not even when I stopped coming to Friday dinners. Not when I deactivated my social media. Not when I sold half my clothes to buy a refurbished laptop and moved into a rented room with peeling paint and a broken lock. They weren't worried about me. They were worried about being embarrassed by me. I overheard my uncle tell someone that we're just trying to keep things quiet until she gets help. Like I was some kind of scandal, a family shame to be managed and swept under the carpet. What burned most wasn't the lies, it was how easily they believed them. All my life, I was the good girl, the obedient one. I followed the rules, took the safe jobs, stayed quiet when it mattered most. But the moment I made a decision they didn't understand, everything I had been suddenly meant nothing. My years of reliability were erased in a heartbeat, replaced with a diagnosis I never received from people who had never once looked into my eyes and seen me. They didn't care that I had built a prototype in my spare time, that I'd already spoken with therapists, market analysts, even potential investors. They didn't see the charts I'd drawn up, the customer pain points I had mapped, the entire mental health platform outlined in my notes. They saw a girl sitting in her pajamas at 2 in the morning, staring into a screen. And to them, that was madness. But to me, it was the beginning of something real. And yet, even I started to question myself. I would lie awake at night and wonder if maybe they were right. Maybe the pressure had gotten to me. Maybe I wasn't cut out for something this big. Maybe, just maybe. I was losing my grip, because when everyone you love insists something is wrong with you, it gets harder and harder to believe there isn't. I started to hide what I was working on, pretend I was just taking time off, smile and nod when they asked if I was feeling better. I let them believe the lie because fighting it every second was exhausting, because I didn't have the strength to argue with a world determined to see me as broken. But even then, especially then, the fire inside me refused to go out. Their voices were loud, but my purpose was louder. Beneath all the doubt, all the humiliation, there was a quiet promise I made to myself. If they were going to call me crazy, then I'd give them a reason to remember it, and not one of them would see it coming. They thought they had buried me, but all they did was give me silence, and silence can be a powerful place to grow. I stopped trying to explain myself. I stopped defending my vision. I stopped asking for their approval because I finally understood something they never would. Validation doesn't build empires. Obsession does. Relentless, all-consuming obsession. So I gave myself to the work. By day, I took freelance transcription gigs, tutoring jobs, and anything else that paid enough to keep the lights on. By night, I coded, researched, tested. I read case studies, sat in on virtual therapy sessions, spoke with mental health advocates online, people who knew what it meant to feel ignored, unheard, mislabeled, people like me. The loneliness was a different kind of pain. No one to share wins with, no one to vent to when something crashed, or when another investor ghosted me after a promising pitch. The quiet was loud, heavy, and filled with echoes of every voice that had ever called me irrational, dramatic, delusional. But those nights were also where I began to transform. I learned how to pitch with clarity, how to anticipate questions that belittled my idea and answer them with data that shut mouths. I sketched my business model on the walls of my room with sticky notes and highlighters. I recorded voice memos at 2 a.m. when ideas hit me like lightning bolts. And somewhere between rejection emails and unpaid invoices, I found something I hadn't felt in years: certainty. Not in the outcome. No, that was still a question mark. But in myself. I wasn't broken. I was building. The first version of my app, still nameless, still buggy, matched users with therapists based on personality indicators and language preferences. A friend of a friend, who had been struggling to find the right therapist for months, tried it. Within a week, she messaged me. "I finally found someone who gets me. I feel like I can breathe again." That message did more than validate my work. It reminded me why I started. This wasn't just about proving my family wrong. It was about proving people like her right. People who'd been told for years that their pain didn't matter, or worse, that it wasn't real. Still, every step forward came at a cost. I missed weddings, I missed birthdays, I missed chances to explain myself because I knew they wouldn't hear me. Every time I went home, I felt like an outsider in my own story. My parents avoided eye contact. My brother joked about the sabbatical I was on. My mother whispered into her phone when I left the room. They thought I was fragile, but really I was focused. They saw a breakdown, but what I was building was a breakthrough. And while they spoke in whispers, I was preparing something louder than they could imagine. Something real, something permanent. I didn't just want to be right. I wanted to change everything. I still remember the exact moment everything changed. Not the kind of change you hope for quietly in the back of your mind, but the kind that hits like thunder, unavoidable, electric, loud. It was a Thursday. I'd just gotten another rejection email. This one from a mid-tier investor who had smiled through the entire pitch and told me my vision was cute. I had $5 in my bank account. I hadn't eaten since the day before, and I was seriously considering taking a call center job just to stop the free fall. I opened my laptop to shut it down, to rest, to cry, to quit. I don't even know which. But then I saw it. One email, unread, subject line, "Regarding your pitch and let's talk." At first I thought it was a scam. The email came from someone I hadn't even pitched to directly, but the name looked familiar. I dug through my notes and found her, Dr. Layla Shah, a licensed therapist, founder of a now-closed clinic downtown. I remembered her sitting quietly at a startup event, asking only one question during Q&A. "Have you ever worked directly with patients?" I hadn't, not clinically. but I had listened to hundreds through forums, interviews, DMS, enough to know that most platforms treated mental health like customer service, scripted, cold, in and out. That's what I told her at the time, and apparently it stuck. Her email was short. I've seen enough of the industry to know when something real is being built. Let's talk. I want in. I stared at the screen, my hands shaking. We met that weekend. She offered a small angel investment, just enough to clean up the code, hire a real UX designer, and stabilize the app. But more than money, she offered something I hadn't had in months: credibility, experience. Someone whose opinion couldn't be dismissed with a condescending smile or a fake laugh. She joined as an advisor, co-signed my next investor deck, and suddenly people started listening. Doors that had been slammed in my face creaked open. Emails got responses. I got invited to meetings, not just Zoom calls, but real rooms where people wore suits and said things like disruption and vertical integration like they meant them. But even with progress, I kept it all to myself. I didn't share wins on social media. I didn't tell my family. I didn't update the cousins who had whispered about me, because I hadn't forgotten what it felt like to be humiliated, to be pitied, to be painted as unwell for wanting more. I was going to wait until I had something they couldn't ignore, something that would force them to look me in the eye. It came faster than I expected. Within 3 months, we had over 1,000 users on the platform. Therapists were signing up daily. Word of mouth spread faster than any marketing campaign could have. And when a mental health TikToker with 500,000 followers reviewed our app and called it life-changing, everything exploded. Downloads surged. Investors started calling me. I raised $1 million in a single round. The girl they said needed therapy? She was building a company that could save lives. And as I sat in my tiny rented room, now filled with equipment and prototypes and plans, I realized the next phase had begun. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was winning. Success has a strange way of arriving. It doesn't walk through the door with a trumpet or fireworks. It sneaks in quietly, unnoticed at first, until you look up and realize the room has changed. The silence that once felt like suffocation now feels like power. The rejection that once stung now feels like armor. The day the funding cleared, I didn't celebrate. I didn't cry. I didn't call anyone. I just sat still, hands folded in my lap, staring at the confirmation on my screen. $1 million. My company was real now. Not a dream, not a sketchbook, not a prototype buried under self-doubt. It was real, and it was mine. But the money wasn't the victory. The victory was what I did with it. The platform scaled quickly. We launched a new version, cleaner, faster, more intuitive. Therapists had dashboards. Users had mood tracking, AI-powered therapist matching, and culturally sensitive filters no other app was offering. We implemented real human support. No bots, no waiting rooms, no red tape, just connection. The user stories began pouring in. A young man who hadn't left his apartment in 3 years finally started therapy because we made it feel safe. A single mother who'd been dismissed by countless providers found a therapist who looked like her, spoke like her, and understood her grief without translation. A college student who thought about ending everything didn't. We weren't just a business. We were a lifeline. And then came the acquisition offers. Big names, big promises, but I said no, because I wasn't building this to sell, I was building it to last. With our second round of funding, I made a decision no one expected, especially not the people who'd once told me I was too unstable to run a business. I bought the building, the old mental health hospital in our town, abandoned, bankrupt, buried in lawsuits. It was crumbling, neglected. The same hospital my brother had trained at, the same one my parents used to mention with pride during family dinners, until the doors shut for good. I bought it, and I named it Re-Center. We didn't just renovate the building, we reimagined it. Private therapy rooms, wellness pods, group spaces for healing that felt like living rooms instead of laboratories. Light, art, color, everything they say. Mental health spaces can't be because it's too expensive or too soft. We gave it all. And at the front entrance, etched into the glass in elegant minimalist font were the words, "Founded by Elena Noor." For a long time, I would just stand there, After the staff went home, after the therapists finished their sessions, I'd walk through the halls, listening to the hum of the place, real people healing, real people working, real lives shifting. Sometimes I wondered if my parents had seen the building, if they'd driven by and noticed the changes, if they'd recognized the name. I told myself it didn't matter, that I didn't care, but of course I did. I wanted them to see it. I wanted them to feel the weight of what they'd tried to crush, not out of cruelty, out of truth. They had buried the real me under shame, silence, and stigma, but I had unearthed her. Piece by piece, line by line of code, pitch by pitch, rejection by rejection. I had built her from scratch, without their approval, without their applause. And now, her name was on the building they used to speak about with reverence. I didn't need revenge, I needed visibility, because the world deserved to see what could happen when someone is no longer afraid of being called crazy for dreaming. I had been labeled unstable for refusing to live a life that wasn't mine. Now, I was the one running the place they used to call the pinnacle of stability. And the universe? It wasn't done yet. I didn't expect it to happen so soon. It was a Monday. The clinic was buzzing, our new group therapy wing had just opened, and I was reviewing the week's intake reports with our clinical coordinator. I was tired, but it was the good kind of tired, the kind that meant progress, not burnout. Then Patricia, my assistant, knocked gently on my office door. Her voice was soft, like she was unsure of what she was about to say. "There's a walk-in, an older couple. They don't have an appointment, but they said they need urgent care, something about anxiety and insomnia. I think it's your parents." My heart didn't skip. It stopped. For a moment, I couldn't speak. I just stared at her, trying to make sense of the words. "My parents? Here?" She continued, almost apologetically. "They said someone recommended this place, that it's the only clinic they trust." I stood up slowly, feeling something thick and hot rising in my chest, something between laughter and rage, of all the places, after everything. Now they trusted me. I didn't rush to greet them. I let the receptionist take their forms, let the intake nurse ask the questions. I watched through the one-way consultation glass as they sat in the waiting area, my mother clutching her purse like a lifeline, my father hunched over, looking small for the first time in my memory. They looked tired, not the kind of tired that comes from a bad night's sleep, but the kind that comes from years of carrying a version of yourself you can't keep pretending to be. I heard my father say he was having chest pains at night. Panic attacks. My mother admitted she hadn't left the house in weeks. Her world had shrunk down to 2 rooms and the sound of her own spiraling thoughts. And just like that, the past collided with the present. The people who once mocked the idea of therapy were now begging for it. The same voices that dismissed mine as unstable were now searching for answers they couldn't find alone. The irony didn't sting, it burned. Still, I didn't go in. I instructed the staff to treat them like any other patient. No favoritism, no explanations. I wasn't here to be a daughter today. I was here to be what they had always refused to believe I could be, the woman who built the place that could help them. They didn't recognize my name, not on the paperwork, not on the brochures, not even when the nurse said, "Our founder created this space after seeing how poorly mental health was treated in families and institutions alike." I stood behind the glass and waited. Eventually, they were led into an intake room, standard procedure. I could have walked away then, let them get help, let the moment pass in anonymity. But something inside me, something I'd spent years tempering, rose up and whispered, "No, let them see." So I opened the door. My mother looked up first. Her eyes widened, and for a second, I saw every memory flash through her. My childhood, the dinners, the dismissals, the shame. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. My father blinked slowly, confused, then quiet, then something like guilt washed over his face. I stepped inside, calm, professional. "Good afternoon," I said. "Welcome to Recenter." Neither of them spoke, so I did. "You once told me I needed professional help. You were right, but not in the way you thought." I placed a brochure on the table, the front cover gleaming with my name. "I built this clinic for people who were silenced, stigmatized, ignored, people like me, like you. Still nothing, just silence. It wasn't the dramatic confrontation I imagined all those years ago. There were no screams, no apologies, no tears. Just two broken people sitting in the healing space of the daughter they tried to break. And that was enough. They didn't say a word. Not when I spoke, not when I handed them the intake forms, not even when I turned and walked out of the room with their shame echoing behind me like footsteps in a hallway I used to sneak down as a child. But silence, I've learned, is a language of its own. And theirs was loud. That night, I sat alone in my office, lights dimmed, the weight of the day pressing down on my shoulders like wet wool. I should have felt vindicated. I should have felt victorious. But instead, I felt hollow. Because there's no trophy for proving your pain was real, no prize for being right about the people who were wrong about you, and certainly no joy in watching your parents unravel under the same fear they used to weaponize against you. They had walked into my clinic seeking help, and I had given it, without fanfare, without vengeance, without cruelty. But I couldn't ignore what their presence stirred inside me. Memories came flooding back. The times I'd cried behind locked doors, overheard hushed whispers about how I needed discipline, not support. The night they told me I was too sensitive, too dramatic, too much, when they claimed I was just looking for attention, as I tried to explain that I couldn't breathe under the weight of pretending to be someone I wasn't. Now they were the ones gasping for air, not metaphorically, literally. Anxiety attacks, sleepless nights, emotional paralysis, and the very thing they had dismissed, therapy, empathy, healing, they were begging for it now. I thought I'd want to slam the door in their faces, but I didn't. I thought I'd want them to grovel, to say the words we were wrong, we're sorry, but they didn't. And maybe that was the final wound. Not that they hurt me so deeply back then, but that even now, they couldn't offer the one thing I never stopped hoping for: recognition. Still, I refused to carry their silence any longer. The next morning, I walked into the room where they waited for their follow-up consult. They looked surprised to see me again. "I've assigned two of our best clinicians to your cases," I told them, voice steady. "You'll get the support you need." My father opened his mouth as if to speak. Maybe an apology sat on the edge of his tongue. Maybe it was just another excuse. But I held up a hand. "No need to explain," I said, softer this time. "Just do the work." Because healing isn't owed, it's earned, and I wasn't going to let their refusal to change define me any longer. I left the room, not as the abandoned daughter desperate for their approval, but as a woman who had outgrown the box they tried to keep her in. I had become something they couldn't control. I had become free. And freedom, I learned, is never loud. It's quiet. It's firm. It's choosing to build something beautiful from the rubble of someone else's neglect, and then walking away without needing anyone to notice. But sometimes, they do. 2 weeks passed before I heard from them again. A single envelope arrived at the clinic, no stamp, no sender's name, just my name written in my mother's handwriting, crooked and unsure, like she'd forgotten how to form the letters. Inside, folded neatly, was a note. "We didn't know how much we didn't know. Thank you for not turning us away." That was it. No grand apology, no detailed confession. Just a quiet acknowledgement from people who'd spent a lifetime denying me the dignity of being understood. I read the words 3 times, then tucked the note into a drawer and locked it without a word. Because I didn't need their apology to validate what I had become. The truth was, they had given me more than pain. They'd given me fuel. Every time they doubted me, they pushed me closer to my purpose. Every cruel word, every laugh behind my back, every whispered insult they thought I wouldn't hear. It had shaped the steel in my spine, the fire in my chest, the unshakable clarity in my mind. They tried to erase me by calling me unstable. So I wrote myself back into existence through sleepless nights, relentless sacrifice, and a vision no one could see but me. And now here I was, not just surviving, thriving. My name was etched into glass, printed on clinic walls, whispered with reverence in rooms where people once scoffed. I had built something bigger than vengeance. I had created legacy out of isolation, power out of pity, a future out of the fragments they left behind. And the best part? I never had to raise my voice to be heard, because success doesn't always roar. Sometimes it's the soft click of a door opening where one was always shut. Sometimes it's the quiet hum of lives healing under a roof you built with your own two hands. Sometimes it's the moment you realize you no longer need anyone to see you, because you've already seen yourself, clearly, completely, and without apology. They told everyone I was mentally ill for daring to believe I could do something bigger than myself. Now, they book appointments at the building I own, and I don't feel hate. I don't feel bitterness. I feel peace. Because the return on pain is power, and I've claimed every bit of it.